tonight, you know these two. I'm thrilled to introduce chef, writer, television star, restaurateur, and photographers taking the picture of and humanitarian Marcus Samuelsson with his new memoir. Yes, Chef. Samuelsson caught the attention of the culinary world. I promised I would make this as brief as possible. Yeah. At the age of 24, I'm going to go really fast. When he was the executive chef at Aquavie. Since his tenure there, he's done many things, including being a guest chef at the White House under the Obama administration, participating in Iron Chef America, opening Red Rooster, starting a website and writing cookbooks, and now a memoir. He's been honored on multiple occasions by the prestigious James Beard Foundation. This evening, he'll be in conversation with, ta-da, writer, editor, cookbook author, and co-creator of Food 52, Amanda Hesser. Please join me in welcoming Marcus Samuelsson and Amanda Hesser. Thank you very much.
Thanks so much for coming. It's so great to be here with you, Marcus.
It's nice to be here with you, Amanda.
So, I'm going to start just by, I'm going to talk we're going to talk for about 30 minutes probably. I have a whole bunch of questions for Marcus about his book and what's going on with him. And then we really hope that you will ask your own questions after that. Because I know you guys are here to talk to Marcus and want to give you a chance to do that. Back in 1997...
But before we start, we should at least tell these people how we know each other.
I'm just about to do that.
All right. So I would like to give them my version. Or you want to go with your version first?
Sure, actually. Yeah.
Good.
And then you can do your version.
Okay, great.
So my version is that, I moved to New York City in 1997 to work at the New York Times. And one of my first assignments was, at the Times, the New York Times dining section did something called the Chef Column. And it was a series each week for like 8 weeks where a writer would pair with a chef, and then they would do kind of like their 8 signature dishes or things that expressed their way of cooking. And so I was assigned to do 8 weeks with Marcus. And so we spent a ton of time in the kitchen at Aquavie. And so my question for you, Marcus, is that the idea of this was that you had to pair a writer with the chef because chefs can't write. And so then I read this book and I think my job could have been so much easier.
Yes.
You could have just written the column.
Well, it's 2 things to that. First of all, Amanda's she has selective memory, so I'm going to include you with what really was, right? At the time, that didn't even exist. I remember when they asked me, the Wednesday section, it used to be on Fridays, and there was 2 chefs that asked before. It was Jean-Georges did before me, and Michael Romano did before. It was the one who opened it.
Wow.
And Rick Flass, yes, was the one who said, well, we need to have somebody that is young, that has your energy. I said, okay, perfect. I don't know. Whoever. And in comes this. Our kitchen is like a bunch of misfits of Swedes and other people who couldn't get jobs anywhere else. And in comes this gorgeous girl into the kitchen. And I'm like, and Amanda can both cook and write, and she speaks French. And I was like, I've never met a person that was my age and can cook and write. I just never met that combo. So Amanda was clearly my first food crush. So then after this column were done and we went very well, we said we have to celebrate. And Amanda was very clear. I work at the time. This is not a date. And I said, I got it, but we still got to go out. So we went to Le Bernardin. Remember?
That's right.
Yes. And I even remember Eric came out. And that was our one date. That's it. So anyway, now we can go back.
I cut him off after that.
Yeah, that was definitely church and state. Definitely. Yeah, it was very good. It was a great one date. We shared the love of French food, and it was great.
Yeah, so
Thank you.
It was really fun.
Yeah.
You too.
Yeah.
So I was hoping you could just sort of tell us all about sort of why you're. It's very clear throughout your book that you're very reserved. Emotionally, you keep things, close to the vest. And I'm wondering, why you decided to write a memoir, and kind of how you did it. Because I mean, just before you were saying this was a 5-year project.
Yeah.
This was not something you like cranked out in a year.
No. I was asked actually around that time by several people around 98, 99, and I was like, absolutely not. I don't know. I was just becoming the chef, barely the way I wanted to become a chef. And I didn't think I had it at all. I was not at all. And I think so much about doing a memoir and so much about being a chef is to get to know who you are. Not just as a chef, but as a person. And when I met you, I hadn't even been back to Ethiopia. And I knew that I always wanted to sort of tap into that and understand it, and then my food will get shaped based on that. So at this point, like 4 or 5 years ago when I decided to do it, I felt like I'm starting to see the person that I am, that I want to become, both on a personal level, but also on a cooking level. And that's when I said, okay, I'm ready to start just jotting down ideas. And the first 2 years, it was just me taking down ideas about documenting my journey.
So had you been, because we'll talk about this, but you've done an immense amount of travel and worked in lots of different, and you did keep cooking notes. Did you not keep, did you keep a diary of any sort? Did you have any? Okay.
No, and I had like this little, like brown and black books about when I was in France and when I was in Switzerland and so on. But I really wanted to lay out, people always thought that the meat was, oh, you black kid, they're raised in a white family. And I'm like, that's not the meat, that's my family, right? I felt, for me, I wanted to do a book that, if I was a young cook coming up, there was no book that spoke to me. So I wanted to sort of fill that gap to something that inspired a young cook coming up. But then also, thoroughly explain the creative person's process, because it's completely different than the person that goes through classic academia. And then on top of that, layer race in there. That the black man's person's perspective, it might not be hard, it could be, but it's just different. And having a conversation about race without polarizing anybody. I mean, for me, the book deals with family, deals with race, and it deals with how the anonymous worker become visible. And when you enter cooking today, when I started cooking, it was one way to enter cooking. You worked in the best restaurant in your local community, and then maybe you went to the big city, and then you went to France. Today, you might be an architect that got laid off, and you watch Top Chef, and now you're cooking. What do I share with that guy? Very little.
Right. But so the first, it seems that, in your book, you make it very clear that like the first influence on you, food influence, really, it wasn't your mother.
No.
It was your, you say Memoir?
Memoir, yeah.
Yeah.
Nice.
Could you tell us a bit about your Memoir?
Well, Helga, my grandmother, and it's funny because essentially we pocket it very often down to race here, but it's also have to do with class, right? She was a live-in, and today I thought it was fascinating to think about a live-in as a white person. So rarely you do that. You think about a live-in, we all know nannies and so on, and they're very maybe from Jamaica or from 30 years ago from the South. No, my grandmother was a live-in. So her journey was really shaped by the First World War and the Second World War. And when you had to have a notebook to go and get your flour and to go and get your grease, because it wasn't butter, and to cook fabulous food based on that narrative. So she didn't have a lot of money, but she ate well. And when we were coming to Sweden, she was way out of that. I mean, she was, she had retired, but the way she cooked was based on her journey that started at 11 years old, taking care of her own family, and making the sacrifice of only having one child, my mother, because they couldn't afford it, and eventually adopting a Jewish girl, right? And that's, so again, it's nothing to do with race, it's to do with class, poverty, it's class, but it's also about eating well.
But it seemed like you sort of identified with her kind of class and approach to work, like more so than your father, who was an academic and who had done that to really like escape this sort of working class lifestyle.
Yeah, I mean, my grandmother was, in so many ways, you know, she's a loving grandmother. So she didn't know when I came back from school, which my father knew exactly. She didn't. I mean, it was a nice way of being there. Hanging out in Mormon's kitchen was a great way of spending an afternoon. So there was so much love in that house. Well, with you couldn't, you know, the worst thing you did was that you rolled the meatball wrong, you know. But with my father, it was much more pressure, you know. And I respected and feared my father in many ways, in the sense of that he came from the village being a fisherman, going through basically two classes, from working class, middle class, and eventually upper middle class, through education. And that gave him sort of English, it gave him the world, it gave him a window into this other lifestyle that we were the benefiter of. Done. It can also be like, how will I ever be able to live up to what he's done? You know, it's something I thought about, not as an 11 or 12-year-old, but definitely as a 17 and 18-year-old.
So, and how did he respond when you first started, like, wanting to pursue cooking?
Well, he didn't understand cooking, because he felt like we left cooking, like that's what are you doing? But he knew that I wanted to do it. He understood passion, because he had to leave his fishing village to go to college and to go to university. So he knew the pursuit of happiness was through his craft and his family. So he supported me on that. He just wanted me to be very serious about it. And it was very clear about cooking. It's a blue-collar job. And if you don't do it well, I mean really, really well, you see this nice house, you see this here, you're not going to be able to buy that. But he didn't say, he didn't relate it always to money. He just related to, like, you have to take a 10-year to 12 years approach on it.
There's one point in the book where I think you're offered a job in some place other than France, and he says don't take it.
Absolutely not.
Because France was like the pinnacle of...
Our family worked towards Switzerland and France, and that also shows how little we knew back then about it, right? But the option was Switzerland, France, not even Italy was on the map. And I got a job in Amsterdam, and he just knew Amsterdam is not known for food. Switzerland... And then at that point, Switzerland wasn't even on the table. I just had to go back to work the next day and say, I can't take it. I can't take the offer. And that was so embarrassing. And the guy was like, dude, I thought you were 18. I thought you were like in charge of your own life. What's going on? Well, not really. I'm renting still. I'm living with my parents.
I mean, you alluded to this, but, you know, I think everyone, when they... who knows about you, or or knows what until now has been written about you, they think of kind of like the drama of your life being that, you know, which was no small drama, that, you know, your mother became ill in Ethiopia, and as did you and your sister, walked 75 miles to the hospital where she died, and then your father not being around at the time because he was potentially, was he at war then, or the country was at war? Was he away, like fighting? Okay. And then you were adopted, and think that was it. But you know, in the book, you reveal that that's just the beginning of your dramas, and that I was struck by like how many. Actually, quite terrible things happened when you were working in kitchens, like from the injuries to people like just like dying. And I was hoping you could just talk a little bit about that and how it kind of shaped your career.
Yeah, no, but first of all, adoption. People want to have. I want to give people. I think the reader deserves. The first thing I was committed to in the book was that. It's not going to be a victory lap. I didn't want to do that. I hated known celebrity books where you actually knew less about the person after spending a whole book reading about them than before. So you have to be brutal honest, right? It's about honesty. And that takes time. And it's okay to say in a meeting that you're not going to do a victory lap, but then you got to go there and do it. And adoption is one of these things that it's just very complex. There's somebody giving something up, and there's somebody being very happy on the other side. Regardless of race, regardless of continents, it's just a complex issue that is just not home run, everybody happy, and it works. So I want to show the reader a window into that. Now when you deal with adoption through the countryside of Ethiopia with middle-class Sweden, it couldn't be further away from the worlds. So I've learned to ask my Ethiopian father. I will never find out exactly what happened. I know that now. I didn't know that. I thought actually meeting him would be asking him these questions and finding out the answers. It's not going to happen. It's just not going to happen. And there lies also the mystique in the countryside of Ethiopia. And that I'm good with that now. I mean, I met my brothers and sisters, and I have 8 other brothers and sisters that me and my wife take care of, and we have a wonderful relationship with them. But it's just not as, oh, and on weekends you can go and say hi to your adopted parents. And the other thing I also want to show is that, you know, my mother, if she would have the technology and know-how of how you can get pregnant today, we wouldn't have been adopted, most likely. So there's a lot of random circumstances that happen. This nurse in the hospital, she had 3 kids already, and she took us in. There's thousands of kids in this hospital. She took us in. So my point about that is that all of us are here because, not just because of ourselves, because of our families, but also because some random incident that happened there. You need a luck on your side, and I'm a proof to that without that nice nurse just saying, I'm going to take these kids in and set them up for adoption, we wouldn't have been here. My parents found before we got adopted, they found a boy in Bolivia, but his grandmother always wanted to have. My parents were supposed to come back every year and show that the boy was doing okay, right? If she wouldn't have asked for that, I would have been back in Ethiopia, and they would have adopted a Bolivian boy. You know, so there's a lot of things that happen that was out of my control, and I want to show that each time you think you're here by yourself, you're not, and that's a humble sort of silver bullet that have gone through my life and that I think about. I think about that when I waste food. I think about that when I say no to someone's dream. You cannot work here. I think about that when I have to let somebody go. Yeah.
You know, but one of the things that you noted in the book, though, was that you don't mind. You don't mind like firing somebody for not doing a good job or not working hard.
It's a privilege
you mind,
for the person to make them available somewhere else if they don't fit with us.
Yeah, you know.
It is. It's a better fit for everybody.
But I want to get back to like your training in European kitchens.
Yes.
Was no holiday, and that it seems to shape the way you kind of view the world today. I mean, it's very different from American
mark
chefs.
I have in my face or in my arms has been given by either a German or a French chef with the word Scheisse or Merde behind it. With passion, seared scallop in my forehead. With passion. But I did not relate that to a racial issue.
Yeah.
I related it to I probably screwed up. Having mashed potatoes, at least I got good mashed potatoes thrown in my face by a 3-star Michelin chef. It wasn't some bad. I mean, if you're gonna get it from somebody, get it from Georges Blanc, at least. I mean, it's about that commitment, about understanding what it would take. And I think all the chefs that are at a certain level in this country has done a similar path and understand that journey. We share something. I mean, if you ask Eric, if you ask Jean-Georges, if you ask Danielle, if you ask the top 7, 10 in this country, there's no doubt what they understand and what the path that they've gone through. Mine is not on that level that unique, on that specific level, no.
Yeah. Okay. Fair enough. I was just sort of struck about there were bad things would happen in these kitchens, and it was just and the show goes on. The service is going to happen.
Yeah.
And, if someone dies, everyone's still going to show up for work.
Yeah.
And grieve on their own.
Yeah.
Kind of.
No, it was very tough because we lived in dorms, and these were my roommates, and every day it was the same thing. As I'm sure if you go to a really good college and you fear the professor, but you're also in awe of the professor, right? And I feared two people. I knew I couldn't call my mom and said that I got fired, and I feared the chef. I feared both my mom and the chef equally. So if I would get fired, my mom said, "Well, you're not coming home." And it was also this thing about understanding the kitchen is a dangerous place. There is hot oil. There is wet floors. There is somebody walking with a knife. And there is a chainsaw right there. So one of the reasons why chef is hard is because this is not an office where maybe you get hurt, your wrist because you've been typing too much. What is that? Like you lose a finger or you lose your arm in the machine as you're grinding meat. Or somebody comes to you with hot water or hot oil and you're never coming back, and that's reality. And that's why chef is so regimented about how it needs to be in this specific kitchen. It's very hard for an outsider to understand, but all of us that's in the tribe of cooking get it.
Yeah, I just want to read this one quote from the book when you're talking about the difference between American and European cooks, and you say, to get ahead in that culture, you have to completely give yourself up to the place.
Yes.
Your time, your ego, your relationships, your social life, they are all sacrificed. It's a daily dose of humility that a lot of Americans find difficult to swallow.
Yes. Yes, chef, absolutely.
I mean, I was struck also by this one story where you were getting a promotion, and you were so surprised that you got this promotion that you just stood in silence, and then the chef yelled at you for standing there and told you to get out. Yeah. It's very, just a completely unforgiving, no coddling whatsoever.
No, and because it wasn't that, he just thought that I was the best person for that job. Now, we're done with you, get out. Like next, and it could have been, but I think sometimes if you understand, if you're a woman or if you're black or if you're Korean or something like that, if you get over the first hurdle, it can also make you sharper, right? Like for me, I knew there was zero, he's truly walking on this thin ice, right? It's like in Sweden, if you walk on ice in April, you might fall in, and there is no, but you can also make it. And for a black chef in Europe at that time, I was that guy. First of all, I had to open the position. They've never seen a black cook. So without even creating. So if I made one mistake, I was out. That helped me keep a focus of not. So if I had to show up at 8 o'clock, I showed up at 7 o'clock. It just helped me to focus very, very clearly. I knew because they had Portuguese dishwashers. That's how dark they went in there. Portuguese dishwashers. That was. Africa doesn't even exist.
I mean. You went to. I think you took a trip to Nice to get for a job.
Yeah.
When you showed up at the door, and they saw you.
Yeah.
You want to tell that story?
Yeah, I mean, I was super happy. I got a job in a 3-star Michelin restaurant in Nice, and after 35 tries, I was super excited. Celebrated with all my friends, and the ritual used to be me and my mom going to the local library, write every year to a bunch of 3-star Michelin restaurants, and we got the same answer: no, c'est pas possible. So it was, and then eventually I got a yes. We had a party with my friends, took the 40-hour trip on the train down, and then the chef saw me, and I just at that point, I call it the look. chef is coming out, or it's not even chef, sous chef is coming out, and he sees you, and he just looks right past you, and then you get introduced, and he looks in this fear, because he understands now that I'm not going to hire this guy. I'm not going to get in trouble for hiring. But he was confused because he thought it was Marcus Samuelsson, was a Swedish guy. At that time, there was no pictures you send in your CV, and it was pre-Facebook. So he just knew that I can't walk back in and have hired the black chef. So he just made it like what any confused young person would do. Absolutely not possible. So then after getting the job, I learned that I didn't get the job. And that was probably one of the times where I could have made it easy for myself to say, I quit, I get out, right? And believe me, I doubted. I mean, I really wanted to, but getting back on the train, those hours back, just made me more focused. So each time there is a place of, and I think it helped me, you know, when I messed up later on in my career, I thought about those moments. And I think cooking is great because you need everything. You need bitter, you need sweet, you need salt, you need sour. But in life, you can't get stuck on bitter and sour. And that was like a good moment to really get that reinforced. And my mom and my father was really the one that's like, you know, my father never thought I got it until I actually had the job. My father was way more suspicious than my mother.
You also had you had, I think, a chef die at one of the restaurants in Europe.
Yeah.
The chef at Aquavit.
Yeah.
You also got in it. Do you want to talk about the car accident you were in? Because that was also...
No, one of my best friends that was the one who really guided me through Switzerland, a young guy, just 1 year. He was 1 year younger than me, but he grew up in in the village right next to where we were working. And we all went on a skiing trip on one of the few weekends that we got off. And, you know, as young guys do, we raced, or we had rented 2 cars, and I rented 1 car and we had another one that we borrowed from his sister. And as those roads goes in Switzerland, you know, we were just stupid. We raced each other, and the car in front of me that he was sitting in and 3 other guys got hit, and he died. And it was, you know, you don't know how you're going to end something, but that was the moment when I knew I had to end. Switzerland, I had to leave. And that was a very tough moment because he was Switzerland for me, you know, he was the guy. And we've had people leave the restaurant, we have people like got hooked on a lot of different things. But to think about somebody that's same age as you, 21, 20, whatever it is, pass away, it's like it was unfathomable.
It seemed like a turning point for you.
Yeah.
But also it's just like there was this kind of growing sort of feeling in your book that like there at some level, you know, becoming a great chef, yes, it's about talent and it's about the drive and ambition to get there, but it's also about the stamina, the ability to be that last man standing. Yes. You know, because there's so many people drop out for. I mean, these were great tragedies, but there were also just people who, you know, just couldn't cut it.
And that there lies one of the reasons why I think women is by far the most influential people in cooking, by far. If you look at it from the grandmother to the mother to in this country, Julia Childs, Alice, and all of these things. But if you look at the fine dining cooking, it fits a very male narrative. Because it is just like being on that island. You gotta, I mean, every year how many new cooks gets educated and how many, but yet if you look at the journey of American food, it's pretty much the same people that are on top. Because they're all a balance between super talented, super hardworking, and they have a stamina that is, it's you know, I see it in Eric, I see it in Jean-Georges, I see it in the same people, you know. And you ask all of them, what happened to and I remember when I was coming up, you might remember this, it's like, I remember those guys who I was coming up with, one got stuck on drugs, one got stuck on drinking, one got just stopped, and boom, you're left on the island. It's very tricky. So
tell us about when you came to America for the first time, and because you actually came and then left and then came back.
I came as an intern to America. I always wanted to come to America, I think. The first time I came to America, I came with my soccer team, and we stayed at Ramada Inn by 42nd Street, and everything that should happen on 42nd Street circa 97 happened. We got robbed. We met LL Cool J and Eric B. and Rakim. Because we were a soccer team that had Adidas outfit, and they were like, who are all these white Swedish boys and then one black kid with Adidas gear on? They should be in our video. So we got to meet Eric B. and Rakim and LL Cool J. It was very cool. And we had 3 coaches, the old guys. One was 23 and one was 25, managing 22 kids. Good luck. But anyway, I liked that. I talk about that trip because I started to see that New York was so mixed. And then eventually, when I started to think about myself as a chef, I felt like I needed to come back to a city where it was more diverse. And I didn't see it in Europe. I didn't see it in Stockholm. I didn't see it in London. I didn't see it in Paris, Lyon. So I had a friend that worked at Aquavit, and he gave me an internship. And just being here in New York and falling in love with New York City with very low economy is one of the best things. I think we all can share this. We all have had 4 roommates. We've all moved around. We all have been super broke. But it did not mean that you didn't have a good time. And just falling in love with the city like you can only fall in love with New York. When my internship was done, I got a job in France. I had to go to France. I knew I would come back. I knew it. And coming back from France, and that's why I think I always said to my students, the people, young people come to the kitchen, I would say, dream big, because you can do it. And if you land just underneath, you'll be fine. So at that point, I didn't know, I just wanted to get to America. So I wrote to 3 people that I thought I knew. One was Oprah. So I had to sit in France on shared TV and write down Harpo production, and it took about a week, and I got it. She didn't write back. But I was like, of course she didn't write back. She's in Chicago. I want to go to New York. So I was like, who else do I know in New York City? David Letterman. David, I love him. He throws watermelon from a big building. I like this guy. At least he works with food. So I wrote to Mr. Letterman. No luck. And then I was like, okay, who else do I know? Well, I know Håkan because he, was the owner of Aquavit when I was an intern there. And he every now and then came down to talk to me. And he liked the fact that I lived in Switzerland and I was ambitious. So I wrote him a letter, and I said to him, if you hire me, I'm going to make sure that your restaurant's going to become top 10 within a year. And guess what? His restaurant was not doing well, and he said, I hire you. I will provide the papers for you. I will work with you. I'll make sure that you get a position here. So it's not bad batting average. If I would have been a baseball player, it's like 2 strikeouts and 1 hit. It's pretty good. That's why I always say, dream big. One of the things that made me sure that I wanted to come to New York was because of Dinkins. Because the fact that New York City could have a black mayor, that was fascinating to me. It didn't say so much about the black population. It said more about the non-black population. And I was like, I want to work in that city because if that many people can vote for him, that many people will come to my restaurant one day. And without Dinkins, it wouldn't be Barack. So there's a lot of path. And I looked at New York as the most really opened up too, and that was very well written. But both of them land also about this glamorous way of drugs. I didn't experience it that way. I have numerous examples of that. People actually died. And I wanted to recognize that this was in our industry, and you want to say it's happy ending and cool and it's vibe and it's all these things. It could be all that, but there's also, this guy died right in front of us, and he shouldn't have. 32 years old, he shouldn't have. It was all based on just working hard, playing hard, too hard.
so what happened to you after? Do you want to start talking
Well,
about
me and Larry Mannheim, that has worked with Bobby Flay for many, many years, where John came from, Mesa Grill, started to work out a menu. And Larry was great to me because he knew New York. He's from the Bronx. He knew the purveyors. He knew all that stuff. He didn't know Swedish food, but he knew New York. He knew how to get cooks. He knew how to hustle. And I just wanted to focus on the food. And at 23 at the time, I had a lot of food in my head that I wanted to sort of push out. Not all of it great, most of it not great, but some of it really good and delicious. I knew I wanted to pickle and preserve, and had already in my head, how could I redefine this cuisine? Pickle, preserve, salt, sweet, game, seafood. And Larry didn't know that. So Larry knew how to get all that stuff, and I knew how to articulate it. And after a while, Larry just said to Håkan, like, Marcus should be the chef. It was really Larry, again, the goodness of somebody else, giving me a shot. So we constantly, and so again, it goes cross race, it goes cross everything. I've been given chances, and each time I was given a chance, I pushed myself above and outworked it, right? Because that's the only thing I could do. Because I didn't know how to manage. I didn't know how to count. I didn't know how to manage people. Or if somebody wants to leave, I'm like, leave. I didn't think about, oh, how are you doing? Were we nice? There's no psychology. So, when you're 23, there's only one way you know how to do it, right?
Yeah.
Work through it.
So, and then, it seemed like you finally had kind of gotten to the place that you were aiming, which is like running your own kitchen in a big city, this kind of high-profile job. It's sort of like, it's almost seemed like this is the moment that you should have been able to exhale. The restaurant was doing well. I think you got your James Beard Award.
Yeah.
And then you started expanding.
Yeah.
You opened Mercado.
Yeah. And
then things went awry.
Well, it's a lot of things that happened. 9/11, which all of us here is we all dealt with this differently. It all had a different imprint, and every single person here has their own stories about that. I cooked at Windows of the World the weekend before it happened. I knew with CCAP we had yearly our breakfasts at Windows of the World, and Michael O'Monaco was always such a gracious host to us. I knew those cooks. When that happened, when those 70 cooks and waiters died that I knew, I was like, what are you doing? Are you just going to run around, work? It starts to ask you those questions, right? What is the larger? And then we worked ourselves out of that. Then we had a fire. Then we had to move. And in between that, it was a war started. So what should have been sort of just easy, breezy time wasn't. It was really, really fighting for your life. And then when the economy started to go up again, the rat race for getting stuff was, somebody said you can pay $80,000 rent, you didn't fear it. So I was blinded by where we came from and my ambition to put Africa on the map. Now the idea of having a fine dining experience in New York that is inspired by Africa is nothing wrong with. But the idea of putting that in the meat packing district is horrendous. And that's my fault for doing that. When people just want to party and have a good time, I should have known better, and I didn't, because I wanted to do it so bad, and I didn't edit myself, and I didn't curate, and I didn't present it in the night way. And a fine dining first restaurant, the African inspired, shouldn't chase rent. They should chase flavors. And we were chasing rent. And that's my decision. I can't blame that on anybody else.
So things start kind of falling apart on the business side. And, and it seemed like you also had kind of outgrown your partnership.
Amanda, we don't give them any reason to buy the book, by the way.
Oh,
you know
sorry.
that. You're giving them the whole book away.
Am I? There's just so much good stuff in it.
It can also be read on Food 52.
I'm sorry.
No, I'm just kidding. I'm just
but there's so many good details I just want to I want to hear more about. So I didn't talk about any of the juicy bits about girlfriends, though. So
no,
that is still in the book.
We sort of covered that in the beginning. I have to, speaking about girlfriends, I have a couple of people from Harlem that I thought I could trust on would be here. And I met my wonderful friend Thelma Golden that is in the book. And the first thing she says, Marcus, I'm not here for you, I'm here for Amanda. So thank you very much. She's over there with an incredible artist, Glenn Lygen. So go and see his shows. By the way, that was the shout out.
All right, so I want to just talk about this one last thing.
Yes.
And then we will open it up to questions.
Yes.
But just this amazing sort of twist in your story, which is that, you know, when you go to kind of break free and like go your own way after post Aquavit and your partnership with Hakan, you've built up such a name for yourself, a name that is not your birth name.
Yeah.
And you that they actually want to own part of your name, and I just
well, it was a very difficult days for me because I never, you know, as a creative person, I think we tend to think about the creativity first and not lawyer up. It's just never dawned to me that I didn't know my own name. Never thought about not being. If I owned something when I came from France and didn't have a dime, at least I owned my own name. Then cooking as well and working as hard, you should own your name. It should be clearly, but I didn't. And I just never thought about somebody would actually, it was that easy that you can go on some site and lock up another person's name. And I never thought that that would be a person that I would work with. So it was hurtful. And any divorce is messy on both sides. It was just not on my side, my end. So I had these doubts, like, what does this name mean, Marcus Samuelsson? Well, my birth name was Casson Segai. Should I do it? Should I do like a Prince moment of just go back to some other name? And I thought about it every day. I thought about what should I do? And I didn't know this. And I also, because that's also something I wanted to give back to all the cooks. I was sort of, that shout out to the young cooks is like, some cooks that comes into the industry right now. I met this 12-year-old. He's like already has an agent, has the recipes, and is going to publish a book. I'm like, as crazy as that sounds, I'm happy for him because when he's 22, I'm 32, I'm 42, it's very clear to him whether it's going to work or not is something else. But he will not be in that situation. And we just don't think about it. I didn't think about it, and that was bad.
Yeah. No, it was just that you had gotten so high in your career, and then things kind of came crashing down, and now you've built them back up.
Yeah.
And just wondering sort of now, like, where you see things going. I mean, you now have Red Rooster plus 5 other restaurants. You know, you've got Food Republic. You know, I'm sure I don't know all the things that you're involved in. There's many, you have 700 employees suddenly. What
hard work.
Yeah. But I'm just wondering, sort of like, what are you thinking is kind of, because you've been very thoughtful about your career and very controlled about it, and you've made mistakes. So
many, and when I will make,
like,
the only thing I guarantee, I will make mistake again.
Yeah.
But the idea, I think, first of all, I think people don't have time. It's a privilege to have a conversation with the public. When I think about that, who has had a conversation with the public for 20 years? It's a privilege. And to have that in cooking, and then to have that with people that look like me, there's very, very few. So you have to take care of that. For me, it comes down to, why did the book take 5 years? Because I don't want to waste someone's time. Why did Red Rooster take a long time to create? Because I don't want to, if I'm going to ask you to come to Harlem, we better be nice and present and preserve the heritage of American food that we've actually put very little value on. We've invested more money in Tuscany than in barbecue. We invested more money in Burgundy than to find out the story about Tex-Mex and how it got to us. We know more about places in Spain than we know about the Chinese Americans' journey to America. That's failure. So I just think that what it goes back to 9/11, goes back to the whole idea of being a chef as something larger. Can I address food chasm? Can we change the footprint of dining? Can we have an imprint in our community, which matters in a place that has 19% unemployment, which matters in a way where 40% of African American men are not working. It's a different reality when you are in a place that has different circumstances. Mm-hmm. And it's not like somebody's going to come and get Harlem. It's like, no, we got to do it ourselves. And I knew I couldn't do that from 58th Street. I had to move. You know, sense of arrival for me was not moving out of my community. Sense of arrival for me was to move into the community and learn about the community as such. So for me, I think this is why that's perfect. This is why that's my job. And eventually, I think 10, 20 years from now, I think it will be in the Bronx. And I'm not thinking, I know it will be in the Bronx.
Yeah.
So just moving the conversation to good food.
Right.
Yeah.
Great. So we'd love to take questions.
Yes. All right, who's going to be the brave one? So if we don't, otherwise, yes, ma'am.
Hi. I'm a teacher in Harlem.
Nice.
At the Capital. It's on 130th and Edgecombe Avenue. And I always tell the kids, I ask them, what do you want to be when you grow up? And a lot of them say, I want to be a baseball player, I want to be a basketball player, or something like that. And that's their dream, and that's great. But I always ask them, what's your backup? So if you were going to tell them, what's the backup? Obviously you followed your passion, you followed your dream, and that worked out for you. But what was the backup if it didn't work out for you?
Well, I failed as a soccer player, so cooking. This is my backup. Yeah. But I think that's good.
No backup.
Yes, ma'am. I go home about 4 to 5 times a year. I learn a lot in Sweden. We have a restaurant in Gothenburg, my hometown, that looks very much like Rooster. Gothenburg is a very blue-collar town, but we have a restaurant in a 1920s post office. And again, the backdrop, Harlem, gives me clear identity of what we should cook. That post office that every person in Gothenburg have some type of relationship with gives me the identity of what we should be serving. Always get out of the way, let the people come in and see this post office, and our food should be seafood based. It should be of the place of Gothenburg. Yes, absolutely. And blue collar. Yes.
I don't mean to bring up a tragic incident, but when your friend died in a car accident, how challenging was it for the retirement from the restaurant?
I did, when my friend passed away, I knew that I had to leave. I just knew, like, that was, you just get something in front of you that, it was towards the end of the season, and it was just it's just that sign of, I had to leave. If I would have been in the middle of the season, I don't know how I would have responded. I don't know. But I talk a lot about the book, all the sacrifices, the funerals you haven't been to, the things you haven't gone to, and that's the other side of cooking. Not so much of cooking, that's the other side of what I haven't mastered well. And I still don't do that. I cook weddings. I don't like to go to weddings. It's weird. It's very weird for a chef. Because you used to work them. These big occasions, Yes, ma'am.
What's your favorite dish? What's the most requested dish?
What's our favorite dish at the restaurant? Well, we have 3 types of customers. We have the visitor, we have the New York and the Harlemite. Of course, a lot of people want to come up and try the fried chicken. And people want to try something from my home country, so they try very often meatballs or gravlax. So, yes. Sweden has a diverse African population, yes.
Are they influenced by Ethiopian portraits?
Well, I think first, Norda has a very strong focus of Gothenburg. And then we always lend ourselves license to borrow the narrative from who I am. So berbere is on the menu, injera is on the menu. But you don't just taste bluntly. The first thing you taste when you see the menu in Gothenburg, you see Gothenburg. Cod, shrimp, herring, dill, oysters. And then the oysters might be served with a cucumber and berbere mignonette. So there are ways to work it in. In Malmö? I'm not. I don't think so. No. Yes, sir.
What are the top 3 places you like to eat in New York when you're not eating? And what are the top 3 places that you want to travel to try new food in the world or somewhere?
Top 3 places. Well, I'm fascinated about America because I just think that it's we have a long way to, you know. Like I'm excited about this. I was very excited about State Bird in San Francisco, what they're doing, because it's just fun and different. I'm excited about there's a Chinese Muslim restaurant in San Francisco that I want to try, you know, because I want to see if there is different between them and Indonesian food. I just want to learn about it. I'm excited about that. That's right in front of me. I'm still a really bad sushi chef and a really bad barbecue chef, and I want to master these two, like Lockhart in Texas. And I just want to master these 2 things. And sushi is going to take for the rest of my life. To do it the way I want to present it, I think it should be served. But I'm excited about those things. And Tokyo is a city that you can explore so many of those things. So I love going to Tokyo because it humbles you in terms of a chef. I don't care what chef you are. That's really knife skills, commitment, execution. But then also like to go to like I said, like when I'm at State Bird, I love you have to be like, it's a creation of a hippie. Like it's incredible. Like it's very thoughtful, but it's fun and it's joyous. And as far away from Japanese culture you possibly can get. But it's fantastic. So I love going to see America. Like I just traveled on the book tour to 15 different cities. The food right now, I've never seen American food be better. Yet, we've never been worse. There's a drought going on right now. 10 million kids go to bed with no food. And we've never had bigger food chasm. How can that be? So it's a fascinating time to be in food. And that's why I started Food Republic and what we write about at ms.com. Because I think, again, as a chef, that we communicate to almost 1 million people a month. Well, we can't just say, hey, Marcus pour beer on Amanda. That's no value. And we have to fill, if we're going to communicate to that many people, we have to fill it with content that people can learn something from. Otherwise, what's the point? Yes?
So my question for you is, I'm a lifelong resident of Harlem, and so as someone who's very much tied into like the changing pace of Harlem, I'm wondering what your ideas are in terms of how new institutions can reach out to people who may feel like the new things that are happening are not necessarily for them. How can new institutions sort of tie into, you know?
Yeah, I mean, the changing, the evolution of Harlem is we're seeing right in front of us, very well documented, an evolution of and the challenge is how can you do, to be very simple about it, like how can you boil it down to do urban renewal without Negro removal, right? That's a challenge, right? But we have to evolve as a country and as a part of town. So we took that. I looked at that as a mirror of what can I do. Well, I know I have 110 employees. When I know that 70% of them are from Harlem, I know we're including people. I know when the handyman that is not included in those 110 people work down the street, live down the street. When the florist, from when we're working with both new florists in Harlem, so we're probably hiring more than that 70%. But that's our goal and that's our job on our website. We don't talk too much about ourselves. We talk more about what's happening in the community. So the barbershop, where you can see great jazz, not at Rooster, somewhere else. So creating this map that if we have 600 people every day come to our restaurant, and we have a request of 1,500 people coming every day, there's got to be a way for us to pass it on. So how other people will do it, I'm not sure, but I just can look at how we can do it. Because we just had a local and a global phenomena just dying, right? We just had Sylvia just passed away. And she was local. If everyone would have treated the localism the way she did, bought Johnson's Diner in the 60s with a loan from her mother coming from the South, serving the same community for 50 years, hiring from that community, she clearly showed us how local and global can work together. So that it's set how to do it. Tone is obviously important, but also hiring from within the community.
So let's take one more question.
Yes.
What's your next project?
I'm going to sign a bunch of books. I mean, I don't think about it like that. I don't feel like we are. I feel like we got to open the Nook. I just had some incredible good cookies here from a woman from Pakistan via Michigan, via Tom Colicchio. And you constantly get inspired by good stuff. Those cookies were delicious. Well, that's good for us because we're about to open a Nook with cookies and cornbread, and our stuff better be as delicious as that. So I don't think about next could be to be better in a vertical way. Next could be, we just had busboys becoming waiters, waiters becoming managers. So more of that is next for me, the evolution within the space. You know, more than next. So I think about that. There will, of course, be a progression, but I feel like the Nook is next. And like anything, we have to curate, we have to sift it through, we have to edit, and we have to make it yummy, tasty, delicious. Otherwise, you're not going to come. You might come once, but you're not going to come back. Yes, ma'am. Yes, last question. This is a bonus track on the LP. Yes. I would say about 50% of my time. I go to Red Rooster every day. I'm in New York, of course. And we have our office right next to us, to the restaurant. And I love being in the kitchen. I love seeing our staff progressing. And even, you know, you like your job when even the bad things about your jobs excites you. You know, and it's truly what that does, you know, and going through the dishes, making sure that we can deliver, so we're not a false promise. So, thank you, Amanda.
Thank you so much. This is
Thank
great.
you.